Where is Pakistan going? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, General Shankar. It's always an absolute delight to be on your show. Uh, Before I start, I just want to highlight one small point regarding what is a battleground state.
Oh, please, sir.
Battleground state is a region or a country. It is a site of an ongoing or a potential conflict between opposing forces. This conflict can be a result of political influence, location, or resource, and which makes the state a target of competing interests. At the this puts the state at the risk of being caught up in the middle of larger conflict or struggle for power. अभी आपने 8-10 मुद्दे जो शंकर साहब से सुने, you will realize that Pakistan squarely lands up in this definition of a battleground state. And this, I want to highlight why has Pakistan become a battleground state from a slight amount of historical perspective. When Pakistan got its independence, Pakistan became part of CENTO. The CENTO and SEATO were two organizations which were created for fighting communism by the West. Now, essentially speaking, Pakistan had no role to play as a part of CENTO to fight communism. But it was this natural perception of threat from India and to join the Western group that pushed Pakistan to become a, a center stage. It is from that time onwards, uh, Pakistan has been a front end of Western strategy, i.e., American strategy of the region ever since its inception. There were couple of reasons why Pakistanis went that route. First was, like I said, first and foremost was to use the US leverage. Pakistan perceived itself a weak state. It wanted to use the leverage to countervail India. Second, it realized that Pakistan as a developing country with huge amount of internal problems needed foreign assistance. So CENTO and its relationships with the Arab world at that particular point in time was a perfect rationale for joining CENTO and which got Pakistan a large amount of India assistance. It also allowed eventually the price had to be paid, and the price had to be paid when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in 1970s, and Pakistan became then a frontline state where a counter-Soviet offensives were launched and a rise of the Taliban and Islamic militancy started taking place. From that time onwards, Pakistan has got engulfed in the regional geopolitics, not only geopolitics, but entire crux of the counter-terrorism strategy or the policies of this region. And it has something that is why it has not been able to break itself away from it. And Americans leverage that situation by pumping in money and resources to Pakistan and making the Pakistanis fight the American war against counterterrorism. And not only counterterrorism, sorry, for the defeat of Soviet Union. So this is the analogy which I wanted to highlight, particularly as to why Pakistan went the westward way. Now comes the period when Pakistan realizes that Americans are pulling out, Soviets have withdrawn. Now this is a period of sort of they were left on the lurch. So at this point in time, Pakistan realized that they needed a new crutch, and that new crutch was in the form of China. They went to the Chinese. The Chinese were already eyeing in the greater geopolitical setup of the region, where the Afghan war was still going on. Central Asia has become a part and parcel of Russian Eurasian dominance. China was trying to create its new BRI kind of a structure, and Americans were losing ground in the region, but they still wanted to remain over there. eh, the Chinese realized that it is important to bring Pakistan in its sphere of influence. And from there onwards, if you recollect, this whole notion of Karakoram Highway and other greater degree of integration with Pakistan started. The another area was that Pakistan were under great sanctions at that particular point in time, and they had no recourse to weapon systems and weapon systems at cheap rates, or what they call it friendship prices. So as a result, what happened was that the Chinese became the new messiah for arms supply to Pakistan,
Okay.
even as the machinations of the Pakistani military with the elite establishment of the United States, the deep state of the United States, continued all during this period. And this was also the period which allowed, through China, through North Korea, the Pakistan access to the nuclear weapons. So this is how we have to understand how Pakistan has allowed its geopolitical location to be exploited by opposing forces and trying to manage them. But the sad reality is that it has not been able to do so. Uh, Next, I go to US came back into the region in 2001 with the global war on terror, attack on World Trade Center. Now Pakistan was fully involved and engulfed into this region. United States were using Pakistani space for bases. United States were using Pakistani for as line of logistics or inducting logistics from Karachi port, etc., etc., etc. And now Pakistan had become a full-fledged proxy of the United States in the region. And Pakistan now was totally engulfed in dealing with Taliban, but the Pakistani deep state will continue to play its games, as we all understand, as we all know how they managed to prop up Taliban, how they put to prop up various shuras, Waziristan, etc., etc., and that's how they continue to play the game. But now I come back further to the current history. 2021, we see the United States pull out of Pakistan. Now, with the pullout of United States Pakistan, suddenly there's a drop in leverage. Biden administration comes. Trump administration was not very friendly. So was Biden administration. So now suddenly the Pakistani establishment has started to lose ground. United States started withdrew just about everything except for minimal military education programs, as also subsequently now, as recently we all know, they have provided certain degree of equipment, $450 million for upgradation of F-16, etc. But the scenario is that the Americans have by and large lost interest in Pakistan. But that does not mean that Pakistan is being left to its own whims and fancies. There are multiple reasons for it. That the United States will continue to remain engaged in the region and play its role, as we have just learned from the various leaks, Pentagon leaks, that it will continue to engage with the Pakistani deep state for multiple reasons. What are the reasons? One fundamental point is that having withdrawn from Afghanistan with practically no standing in Central Asia, this area is becoming blind to Pakistan, to United States.
USA.
So as this area is becoming blind to the USA, the only rationale that they have, the only place where they have leverages is Pakistan. So please understand that apart from what you hear in the press, apart from where you hear in the press, and apart from what you see, there is an interesting intelligence operations which are going on, which are important to understand that they will have their significance, and they are important to understand how much the Chinese penetration is. Second point is, like the general rightly said, there is this great fear of Islamization in Pakistan, particularly with TTP running on the rampage, Balochistan Liberation Army on the offensive. There is a huge amount of internal turmoil. All these elements are making the story of security of Pakistani's assets, the nuclear weapons, are becoming a very, very serious issue. And this is an issue in which world, and there is, I can say with guarantee, there is a coalition of forces globally who are concerned about the security of the Pakistani nuclear weapons. They can talk about any amount, but the fact remains. Third element is that there is an engagement between the ISI, the senior Pakistani military leadership, and the American deep state. This is a very, very old relationship which cannot be overtaken. If you read Wilson Center writings, you read the Stimson Center writings, you read sometimes the Brookings writing, you will see the kind of Atlantic Council.
Atlantic
You will
Council.
see Atlantic Council. You see how they spin the yarn of these things, and so therefore. The element of 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 this spin has to be kept in mind, and there is a certain degree of endearment within the American establishment towards Pakistan. And the last point of the United States continued engagement is this: there is a deep state, or there is an element, I would say, the Indo-Pacific lobby in the United States, which feels that Pakistan is now becoming a part of a China-led Indo-Pacific containment strategy. And that is becoming, why it is becoming part of the Indo-Pacific-led containment strategy is because China is developing the coastal Pakistan along with access from the western Xinjiang through the Karakoram Highway, through high-speed networks, through which has been already created by uh, this communication networks which have been established, and also the satellite linkages and systems and satellite stations that have been created to be able to provide a certain degree of counter value against United States, India-led Indian Ocean-centric coalition of forces and creation of a security architecture. So this is an area that's important for United States. So this is something, if you, I'm sure you, a lot of your listeners and people would have heard that there is this attempt to revive the First Fleet, and the First Fleet is something which we all understand is an Indian Ocean centric fleet. And then my extremely last point is that there is also a concern that the Indian Ocean region, the Indian Ocean littoral, can be affected by the Chinese Pakistani network, and Maldives is an example. If you remember Maldives, how the Maldives government is being manipulated through its Islamic credentials. So these are some of the issues that I just want to highlight. I'll come back later to some of these. As far as China is concerned, for China, Pakistan is a frontline state, as indeed India is a frontline state for the Indo-Pacific in the Indian Ocean. China is seeking access to the warm waters of the Indian Ocean through what I call land routes. It is creating a large number of land routes, which are linking, for example, in the Myanmar, it is linking Yunnan through Indian Ocean, through road and pipelines, rail links, uh, the famous port in
Kaikafu.
on Taifafu in Myanmar is two single buoy moorings. Highest cargo discharges takes place over there. And on here, then we have the Hambantota, and then coming down further to this thing is the Guada. The entire West Makran coast is being developed, evolved into a major security system by the Chinese. It starts from Karachi, where the new berths are being created. Uh, Power is being generated through nuclear power. It's a site for building six or four, sorry, submarines. It is also going down to Guada, which is being dredged to take on aircraft carriers. It is also becoming a storage and a technological base for repair and refit of the equipment. And if you link this up with what is happening in Chinese moves in Iran and West Asia, particularly with Saudis, and then you take it further down to Baba Mandel, where we already see the Yemeni Houthis and the Saudis have decided to seek peace, and then you further go down to the Chinese base in what's it called? It's just coming to me. I'll just
No
Chinese
issue,
base
sir.
on east coast of Africa, uh, Djibouti.
Djibouti.
So if you see, there is this whole network is being created, and Pakistan is becoming central to it, purely because Pakistan can become tomorrow. Let me give an example to our listeners. If Pakistan was to quickly move couple of DF-26Ds or 21s into the region and deploy them, just see the kind of range it will create and kind of impact it will have in the region. So it's not something which the Pakistan cannot do. They have a sign, they have an agreement, they have a security pact with China. So this is something which we need to understand, that there is there are two gravitational pulls taking Pakistan apart. One is the intrinsic relationship with the United States, which have been born out of historical reasons, and the new relationship with China. And China is now looking at, as it gets more and more cornered in South China Sea and East Asia, it is trying to look at the part of its breakout strategy, because China has realized, and we all understand that the greater resource security of China is through Indian Ocean, and that's something which we need to accept that. So if you look at from these two perspectives, we 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 come to a conclusion that Pakistan is in the middle of this two great power struggle. Added to that is Afghanistan. Afghanistan on 15th August 2021 was seen as a victory by Pakistan. And I'm not too sure that on 16th April 2023, Pakistan has the same view. Only 2 days back, the Pakistani army chief said that we have to deal with this menace. We have to cajole them, we have to make them understand, and if they don't listen, then we have to fight them. And today, the situation is that the Taliban led Afghanistan is already telling Pakistan that don't make the mistake or you will face this 1971 kind of a scenario. So the issues are the Durand line, the issues are Taliban sanctuaries, the issues are the support bases that are being created across. We have to understand this, that these are all creations of the Pakistani state, deep state, which is coming back to haunt them. On the other hand, Afghanistan itself is realizing the Taliban government is very smart. they are going more and more along with China, and there are a new axis which is emerging, which is the Afghan, China, Tajikistan, and then going to Turkmenistan, and then they're going towards the Caspian Sea. And there is this whole linkages of the new alignment of China, Russia, and Iran, which is taking place. So, what is happening in this? Understand we have to understand is this: there is a certain degree of isolation of Pakistan taking place. That's something which we need to look at seriously. How serious it is, how just it is my idiots like me who's thinking, or is it, or can we leverage upon this? The next issue is the Arab world. Like the general very rightly pointed out, the Arab world is becoming transactional. Not only transactional, ITU2 concept is bringing certain degree of coherence, economic benefits, trade and investments, because they all realize that at some stage or the other, the oil is going to run out. And they can only leverage oil up to a particular point. They need to develop alternative investment destinations. India with 3.5 billion economy, jumping to 5 billion economy in 26, 25, 26, jumping to close to 7 to 8 by 2030 is an ideal destination. So West Asia's leverage, Pakistan's West Asian leverage is going to decline. It is not saying, I'm not saying that the Ummah and the other people are not going to be aligned, they're not going to give the money, but it is not going to be the bailout packages as seen. And we are seeing the situation right now. So given this perspective, even the last render of the last resort, the Reserve Bank of Pakistan for bailing it out in economic crisis is not going to be there. There's one last point I want to make is, and that is that the in the Pakistani military, there are two schools that are coming up. One is a pro-US element, which is by and large major generals who have studied in schools, colleges, etc., who have been penetrated by the various establishment of the United States. And there is a colonels and below, or brigadiers, some brigadiers, but colonels and below cadres who are going for weapons courses, who are going for training courses, who are going
Into China.
for technology courses, etc. They are having a very different view. And second thing is the maintenance aspects of the Pakistani weapons and equipment is getting extremely dependent on China. Third element, the entire ISR cover that the Pakistan is getting is again getting very Chinese centric. So there is a certain degree of control on the information, technology, maintenance, and upgrades of equipment which the Chinese are exercising. I'll stop here. If there are any questions, I mean, I'll take them on.
Oh, before we, इससे पहले कि we take on questions, I think let me